They didn't fire her. They didn't silence her. They didn't tell her she was wrong. They just made sure her ideas arrived too late to matter. The email arrived at 6:12 in the morning. Not urgent, not alarming. Just a notification from the Academic Review Committee. Request for clarification regarding research position. Clarification again. Marta Velich stared at the subject line longer than she expected. She was a doctoral candidate. 3rd year. Good standing. Her supervisors had praised her work repeatedly. She published on time, taught seminars, never missed deadlines. She had done everything right. The clarification referred to a conference panel she had participated in months earlier, a discussion about methodology. Nothing political, nothing radical. At least, that's how it felt at the time. The email asked her to explain her position more clearly, to provide context, to ensure alignment with departmental standards. Alignment. Marta printed the email before answering. Something about seeing it on paper made it heavier. The meeting was scheduled for the following week. Not disciplinary. Not formal. Informational, the note said. The committee room was smaller than she imagined. 4 faculty members. Neutral expressions. Familiar faces she had passed in hallways for years. No hostility. Just distance. They thanked her for coming. Praised her work, mentioned her potential. Then they asked about the panel. Some of your statements were interpreted as challenging foundational assumptions, one professor said gently. Interpreted by whom? Marta began explaining, carefully, academically, citing sources. The committee listened, then took notes. Lots of notes. Another professor leaned forward. Do you still stand by that framing? She asked. Marta hesitated, not because she doubted her work, because she sensed the weight of the question. Yes, she said finally, with nuance. The word landed badly. The professor smiled thinly. Nuance can be destabilizing, she said. In formative environments. Formative. After the meeting, Marta felt oddly calm. No warning had been issued, no correction demanded, just a note added to her file. Academic position, under review. Under review for what? She asked her supervisor casually the next day. He frowned. It's probably nothing, he said. These things pass if you don't escalate them. Escalate how? By continuing to think. By speaking. Marta checked the internal portal that evening. Her status was unchanged, but a new recommendation appeared. Suggested mentorship alignment session optional, but highlighted. Marta sat back in her chair, a familiar unease settling in. She had entered academia believing disagreement was part of the process, that ideas sharpened through challenge. Now, for the first time, she sensed a different logic at work. Not refutation, not debate, calibration. And she hadn't been told she was wrong. She had been told she was unresolved. Marta attended the mentorship session 2 days later. It wasn't framed as oversight. It was framed as support. Her assigned mentor was a senior faculty member she respected. Calm voice, long career, publications everywhere. I'm here to help you navigate the institution, he said kindly, not to limit your thinking. That sentence mattered, because it implied limits existed. They spoke about Marta's research direction, her goals, her future plans, not about truth, about trajectory. You're doing strong work, the mentor said. But visibility matters, and visibility comes with responsibility. Responsibility to whom? The question stayed unasked. He explained how academic paths formed, which conferences opened doors, which journals mattered, which debates were premature. Timing is everything, he said. Some ideas are better expressed later. Later meant tenure. Later meant safety. Later meant not now. After the meeting, Marta noticed small changes. Her seminar assignments shifted. She was no longer asked to moderate discussions. Her name appeared lower on internal recommendation lists. Nothing official, just drift. A colleague mentioned casually that Marta's work was interesting but risky. Risky how? No one could say. She submitted an abstract to a conference. It was rejected. No explanation beyond scope mismatch. Another paper was returned with comments praising originality and suggesting greater alignment with established frameworks. Alignment again. Marta began editing herself before submission, removing sharper language, softening conclusions, framing questions instead of claims, not because she was convinced, because she was tired. Each softened version moved faster, received fewer comments, passed reviews more smoothly. The system rewarded frictionless thought. One afternoon, Marta overheard two junior scholars talking. "She's brilliant," one said, "but she doesn't play the game." Play what game? Marta realized something with a slow chill. Academia didn't silence dissent. It delayed it. Years passed quietly while careers stalled. Funding slipped away. Opportunities dried up without explanation. No punishment, just patience. Marta checked her portal again that night. Her status hadn't changed. Still under review. But a new note appeared. Demonstrates adaptability. Adaptability meant survival. She sat at her desk, looking at early drafts of her work. Sharper, riskier, more honest. She wondered when she had stopped sending them out, and whether the university had changed her, or simply taught her when to stop pushing. Marta met Ola by accident, or at least that's how it seemed. They were seated next to each other at a departmental lecture series, one of those events designed more for visibility than discussion. Ola was older, recently returned after a long absence, her name still spoken with a mix of respect and caution. "You're under review," Ola said quietly, without looking at her. Marta stiffened. "How do you—" "It shows," Ola replied, "in the way people phrase things around you." They spoke afterward in the hallway. Ola had once been in Marta's position, promising work, strong publications, questions that didn't sit comfortably. "I was told to wait," Ola said, "to let my ideas mature." Marta asked the obvious question. "And did they?" Ola smiled, tired. "I waited 12 years, she said, "for tenure, for stability, for the right moment. And the moment never came," Ola replied. She explained how each milestone brought new conditions. After tenure, administrative responsibility. After that, reputation management. After that, funding dependency. "There's always another later," Ola said, "and it's always just out of reach." Ola had finally published the work she'd been advised to delay. The response wasn't outrage, it was indifference. The debates had moved on. The urgency was gone. The question no longer mattered. "They didn't silence me," Ola said. "They waited me out." Marta felt something sink. She asked why Ola had returned. "To finish something," Ola replied, "and to warn a few people if they're willing to listen." Ola leaned closer. "The university doesn't tell you not to think," she said. "It tells you to be patient." "Isn't patience part of research?" Marta asked. Ola nodded. "Yes, but this isn't patience. It's postponement until relevance expires." That night, Marta opened her early drafts again, the ones she had softened, the ones she had delayed. She saw now what had been taken from them. Not rigor, urgency, and she understood the most dangerous part. The system didn't need to censor ideas. Time did it for them. All the university had to do was control access to now. Marta closed the folder and sat in silence. Because for the first time, she wasn't afraid of being wrong. She was afraid of being late. Marta didn't make a decision right away. That was the first thing she did differently. She didn't rush to publish, didn't withdraw her work, didn't confront anyone. She waited, but not the way the university expected. She began paying attention to patterns instead of advice. Who advanced, who stalled, who disappeared quietly after being praised too often. She noticed how often brilliant students left without explanation. How many postdocs drifted into administrative roles. How rarely anyone openly disagreed once they were close to security. The university didn't punish dissent. It rewarded patience selectively. Marta received another update from the committee. Nothing alarming. Just a reminder that her review was ongoing. Ongoing was the word that did the work. She attended fewer meetings, spoke less in seminars, not out of fear, out of observation. She watched how ideas changed when presented by different people, how the same argument sounded innovative from a senior voice and premature from a junior one. Truth wasn't rejected. It was reassigned. One evening, Marta sat alone in her office, looking at two versions of the same paper, one cautious, one honest. She knew which one would pass review. She also knew what it would cost. Publishing the cautious version would stabilize her. Funding would follow. Recommendations would return. Nothing dramatic, just a future. The honest version would complicate things. Not immediately, but eventually. It would mark her as someone who didn't wait her turn. Marta thought of Olha. 12 years of waiting. Of being told later. Later, that never arrived. She also thought of the students she taught. How often she encouraged them to question assumptions. How sincerely she meant it. The contradiction settled heavily. Marta submitted the honest version. Not everywhere, just once. A smaller journal, less visibility, fewer protections. She didn't announce it. Didn't frame it as resistance. She simply let it exist. The response came months later. Not outrage, silence, no rejection, no acceptance, just waiting. At the same time, her review status updated. Academic position, stable again. She understood now. The university wasn't reacting to her work. It was reacting to her behavior around it. She had become predictable. No escalation, no noise. Just another case that would resolve itself with time. Years later, Marta would still be there. Teaching, publishing cautiously, advising students with carefully chosen words. Her honest paper would remain unpublished, not forbidden, just unselected. Occasionally, a student would ask her why certain questions weren't discussed anymore. Marta would pause before answering, not because she didn't know, because she had learned how answers travel. She would say, "Some ideas need the right moment." And each time she said it, she felt the weight of what the university had taught her. Not how to think, but when thinking is allowed to matter. The system didn't silence her. It didn't have to. It showed her the cost of urgency. And once you understand that cost, you start choosing patience, not as a virtue, but as survival. Marta locked her office one evening and walked across campus as lights flickered on. Students laughed. Professors hurried home. Ideas waited in folders. Nothing looked broken, which was the point. Universities don't destroy thought. They preserve it, carefully, safely, until it no longer threatens the present. And by the time it's finally allowed to speak, no one is listening anymore. Years passed quietly. That was how the university liked it. Marta advanced, slowly but cleanly. No scandals, no sudden jumps. Her name appeared on committees. Her office moved closer to the center of the building. She was considered dependable, reliable. Students respected her. Colleagues trusted her with administrative tasks. She became the person others asked when they needed something to move forward without friction. And that was when she noticed the final transformation. People didn't come to her with ideas anymore. They came with strategies. How far can I go with this? Is this too early to publish? Should I wait until after review? Marta heard herself answering carefully. Not dishonestly, but safely. She began translating risk into timing, turning urgency into patience, teaching people how to survive without ever using that word. One afternoon, a student brought her a paper that reminded Marta painfully of her own early work. Sharp, uncomfortable, alive. Marta read it slowly. "This is strong," she said, "but you might want to soften the conclusion." The student frowned. "Why?" Marta paused. "Because there was no malicious reason. Only experience." "Because," she said finally, "you want people to hear you." The student nodded, grateful. Marta felt something tighten in her chest. Because she knew what she had really said. Not be clear. Be acceptable. That night, Marta opened her old files again. The unpublished paper. The version she had sent once and never followed up on. It still felt right. Still dangerous. Still irrelevant to the present system. She searched citations. Someone else had published something similar years later. More cautiously, more politely. It had been celebrated. Marta wasn't angry. She understood the mechanism too well for that. Originality wasn't rejected. It was redistributed, with safer authors, better timing. Years later, Marta sat on a hiring committee. A candidate's file came up. Brilliant work. Strong recommendations, but a note appeared in the margin. Intellectually ambitious, potentially difficult. Difficult. The room went quiet. Marta recognized the word instantly. She had lived inside it. Someone asked, "Do we think they'll adapt?" Adapt. Marta looked at the candidate's writing. It was urgent. It asked questions that didn't wait their turn. She imagined the trajectory, the reviews, the delays, the suggestions to wait. She cleared her throat. "They're not difficult," Marta said. "They're early." The room nodded. Early sounded kinder. The candidate wasn't hired, not rejected, deferred. Marta went home that evening, unsettled, because she realized the last layer of the system. It didn't just shape individuals. It trained gatekeepers, people like her, people who once resisted, then learned, then participated. Not out of cruelty, out of familiarity. The university no longer needed to enforce norms aggressively. It had people who remembered the cost. Marta stood at her window, campus lights glowing below. She wondered how many ideas were currently waiting for later. How many minds were being told, gently, to slow down. How many truths were aging out of relevance while being preserved. She understood now why the system felt so stable. Stability wasn't the absence of conflict. It was the successful management of time. Delay long enough and urgency dissolves. Wait long enough and dissent becomes history. Marta sat at her desk and opened a blank document. Not a paper, a letter. She didn't address it to anyone. She wrote down the things she had learned, not methodologies, not citations, warnings. She wrote about timing as control, about patience as currency, about how silence can look like wisdom from the outside. She saved the file. Didn't share it. Didn't publish it. Not yet. But she knew something important. The university hadn't taken her voice. It had taught her where voices go to disappear. And now that she understood that map, the choice was no longer about courage. It was about honesty, about whether she would keep teaching people how to wait, or whether, one day, she would teach them something else. Marta closed her laptop and turned off the light. Outside, the campus slept peacefully, ideas resting safely in drawers, waiting for a future that would always arrive, just a little too late.